We were knee deep in clunge.
Yeah.
Actually, they didn't say that.
No.
Oh, they didn't say that in the film.
They rehearsed enough old jokes, but yeah, not that one, thankfully.
Hello and welcome to the Popcorn Club again. This week we went to go and see the Inbetweeners 2. So this one is meant to be sort of 6 months-ish from when they we last caught up with them. Jay's been out doing his gap year in Australia. The other boys have all been getting on with their lives back in the UK and just really not getting on with it, so want to go and join him and see what hilarity will ensue for them in Oz, down under. You know, pun intended.
After 2 series and now 2 movies, it's nowhere near as funny as it needs to be. I think it used to hit a home run with the laughs, I think, in a way that where they would always had that fine line to straddle between sort of being sort of kind of cringeworthy and awkward, but also find the funny side at the same time. I don't think by the time we get to the second film, it's doing it as often as it needs to. It's more about 20% of the jokes are hitting home, and that's across the whole range of, not only is it just like the banter with the boys, which I think is kind of maybe the heart and soul of the initial TV series and kind of some of the bits that work in the film, but as they've been given a bigger budget and more stuff to do, they're kind of relying on kind of more visual gross out bits and pieces.
Unfortunately for this film, it's a step too far and there are more moments that don't work that work, although I wouldn't say it was as low as 20%. The bits that I love in the Inbetweeners just generally is when it manages to pull the humour with the heart and the emotion that is underlying the characters' motivations, rather than it just being surface level stuff. So, for example, they've all got their own way of dealing with being a group of guys growing up in the world and feeling really, really insecure. Will does it in his kind of awkward, geeky way. Jay puts on this big bravado front. Neil's really, really just oblivious to the whole world. There's a backstory to it and you feel like you really connect with them as real people as opposed to caricatures because of the great work they've done in the series and the first film. And when it touches on that sort of humour and that sort of stuff in the second film, I really like it. Unfortunately...
But I also don't think that it's really touching on enough of the motivation, the motivation you speak of behind these feelings. It does just feel now that most of them are like caricatures and just regurgitating the bits of their character that are funny and that are quirky kind of for the sake of it. What is there underlying about Neil's character in this film?
So Neil, I agree with you. He's getting tired. Like, he's the one out of all of them that I'm just a bit kind of like, ugh. I really thought they did a good job with Jay again. This film, there were some really nice moments with him because we all know kids like this, or have known people like this, who put on this big front when actually deep down they're really, really insecure, but not wanting to show any weakness in front of his friendship group, even though his friendship group care about him regardless, really. I loved him dealing with that, and I thought there were some very funny and poignant moments that came with that.
I wasn't a fan of Jay in this film at all. It's mainly
not
because...
even the opening... I thought the opening sequence was really funny.
The first typical Jay moment we get is this elaborate, overblown monologue email sequence, which I think I didn't get on with it at all. I get that the film is just going to play on the strengths or weaknesses of the characters. They're just repeating the same tropes, and which is fine if they find a way of doing it in a way that I think is funnier than it is in the series. It was bigger and it was grander and it was more elaborate. I've been there, I've done that, I've seen it, I've seen you do it better, and I've just had enough of it now.
Disagree, because I think that was a really good example of how they've used their bigger budget and their more resources available to them to good effect, because it's picking up where it left off in terms of Jay and how he is, and putting it in this new context of the fact that he's in Australia. It got a load of the Australian cliches out there, so they didn't really have to go back there right from the beginning. It just set the whole film up perfectly. Unfortunately, the rest of the film didn't necessarily sustain some of that, but I just thought that was a really good use of their new big budget. One of the other things that I like, the typical gap year cliche bunch of wankers, basically. Oh yeah, totally. I've been travelling for like weeks and I've got dreadlocks and I've got this friendship bracelet, and it was just really, really good conversations, and we were looking under the stars. It actually happened to me, and I'm sure millions of other people at uni, talking to just idiots like that, because they do exist, and that stuff was just very, very well observed.
Bits and pieces of that were, but I just don't think it was funny enough.
One of the final scenes when they're in the bush, they think they're done for. There's some very funny stuff and some gross out stuff which didn't bother me too much, but actually some quite poignant stuff that makes them stay true to their characters. They really think they're going to die, even though they're being incredibly melodramatic about it, because they're obviously not. It reminded me a little bit of the Inbetweeners version of the final episode of Blackadder, where there's a lot of, doesn't reach those levels of brilliance by any stretch of the imagination, but it's their version of that. It's very, very funny, almost right up until the last minute, where it sort of fades to black, and very, very character driven.
I think it's quite a shift in pace and tone, and it's a lot more cinematic than everything else that's in the film. Everything else in the film feels a little bit too broad and comedy, whereas that feels like they've tried to do something. Most of the time throughout that whole sequence, I was just kind of praying and hoping that they would actually just kill them all. I thought that might be the moment where that would be it and they'd be gone. And then when they don't, and when they get saved, and when we go back and we bring the families back in, it's the same old...
Again. Yeah.
Oh, the same, just... It's just... it felt like there was something different happening in the desert with the car, and then we almost got somewhere with it, and then we went back to the reality of the Inbetweeners.
It touched on why I liked the original TV series and why I thought the first film was really successful. There weren't enough of those by any stretch of the imagination, but the stuff that was there, I think, is making me still think of it fondly. So, Popcorns, what would you give it?
So I can't really give it more than 5.5, really. I think we've all seen these characters be much funnier. It just needs to just stop now.
I would give it 7. I'm being more generous because I'm very fond of the characters. I liked some of the stuff they were doing there, but it wasn't as good as the first film. It wasn't as good as the TV series, and I think it's run its course now. I think I agree.
Oh, it's definitely run its course.
But 7, just for old time's sake. Next week, we don't know what we're going to go and see yet. Because we really don't want to go and see The Expendables 3 if we can help it. What did you think of The Inbetweeners 2? Did you really enjoy it? Did you hate it? Or somewhere in between? Let us know again in a comment. And if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. You've got a lot of things to do, so you better just get on with it. And we will see you next time. Bye!
Next week, well...